Ambassador Koki Muli is our guest this hour. Ambassador Koki Muli is a governance, democracy, and elections expert. She also lectures at the Southeastern Kenya University. Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
Good to have you on the show again. Happy New Year. You know, we say
Happy
Happy New
New
Year
Year.
until June.
That's true. Or if you don't see each other until the end of the year, it's still
Happy New Year. Yes.
So long as you're happy.
Exactly. It's the first time you're seeing the person in the year.
True.
You're well and healthy.
Yes, I am. I thank God.
For that, we're always grateful.
Crossed over the year well
Yes.
amid COVID and everything else.
Yes.
But everything went well, so we are grateful for that.
Indeed. The last time you were here, we talked a lot about, governance, about you
Everything.
being a political disruptor and your journey in the issues of governance in the country. Your journey into looking at how we elect our leaders, how we hold our leaders accountable. We are in an election year, and there's all this talk and campaigns and hate speech and preparation for registration. And the IEBC is saying it's always open to registration between an election and a couple of days into the next election, but they usually have these enhanced voter registration exercises. One is about to roll out. The second phase of the enhanced continuous voter registration exercise rolls out again from next week, Monday, the 7th of January, up to the 6th of February. The last time they were doing this, they were targeting to register at least some 6 million new voters. And this is looking at the number of young Kenyans who have gotten to the age of 18, who then therefore are in the captive market. They did not get that number in the last exercise, but they're hoping that with this second exercise, they can achieve it. When we discussed the exercise at the point, we looked at various factors that were at play. One was access to information. Another one was access to IDs, because that's a prerequisite for registering as a voter. Do you feel that any of those things have changed as we get into the second phase?
Thank you very much, Eric, and nice to see all of you again. Munga, Ndu.
You did beautifully, Ambassador. You
Yes.
should be given a medal just for that.
I'm yearning for it. And anyhow, your question is very important, and it relates to the preparedness of the next phase of the national massive campaign on registration by IEBC. I want, you are in the media, so you should know whether we are ready and prepared. I have been in Kwavonza.
You've been on the
doing
ground. That's why you're
doing my
asking me.
business in at Southeastern Kenya University. So I must say that I'm not certain whether to answer your question in the affirmative or not, because I actually didn't know, myself didn't know that we are about to begin the next phase. When is it supposed to start?
Monday.
And if I don't know, and
Do your students
I
know?
call myself someone who is
An informed-
knowledgeable
an
in this,
informed Kenyan.
an
Yes.
informed Kenyan, then I think we do have a problem, don't we?
Indeed.
And so one of the factors you raised earlier to say that when we discussed this prior to the previous registration campaign, we looked at some of the reasons why we don't hit the target that we want. And one of them is access to information, also awareness. Did we do any campaign? Did we prepare this? Who else is involved? And, I say the business of registration of voters should involve all the stakeholders. The stakeholders include the potential voters themselves. They need to be aware. They need to be informed where they will go to register as voters, what they need for that. And you can't stick that to your website and expect people to go looking for information. If you want people to register as voters, you go out and get them yourself. You don't wait for them to come for you. And a lot of people, young people and everybody else is really busy with life and doing other stuff. So if we want to engage them, you actually engage them actively in order to, to get them to come to you. The other thing is that I told you this before, we had this discussion before, that if the qualification for a person to register is a national identity card or a valid passport, the first thing you need to do, if I was the one, is to seek out those people who do those registration, to see how many they have registered between the last general voter registration campaign and the one that I'm about to start. And if I to determine how many people have sought and got ID cards, and where they are, because getting the demographics and where they are, it is very easy to determine, and then sort of to reach out to those people where they are, reach out to them, and then get ready for the registration. Because you don't just, even when you are going to sell, cassava in the market, you don't just carry your cassava and go to any market. You have to know that this is where I am likely to sell the most of my cassava before you go. And therefore, you also need to know the cassava consumers when they are coming to the market. Is it on Mondays or on Thursdays like we do in Kalundu market to Kitui? Or is it, Tuesday, whichever date? So that when you go, you have higher probability of selling cassava.
Capturing.
Exactly.
5 days ago, IEBC tweeted that they held a meeting with the National Registration Bureau, and they've even posted some photos in a very dark room here with officials from the National Registration Bureau, where
That's
they say
fantastic.
they were discussing the progress that the National Registration Bureau has made in registering people.
That's
for
great.
IDs.
If they did that, then they know where they are going to get those
That was
voters.
5 days ago. So they know, okay, so you guys have done this. But continuously, have they been having an engagement? That would be the question, with the National Registration Bureau, with the ministry in charge, and this is Interior, for instance, and
with civil society organizations that do this kind of voter
just
education
to
and campaign.
ensure that you're capturing the people at their right places. Have we seen ID registration campaigns in universities? For example, at your university, you have very many young people who just left high school and they've joined university. Do they have IDs?
Well,
You
they
could
all
say they do, because
they do. It's a requirement.
Because
You
they-
have to have a national identity card.
Because also they have to access the
There are a
funds.
number of things that you require it for.
Yeah.
at
So
university.
you have university students are already registered. Now they need to know. I mean,
They
they
are
already
already having ID
they have
cards.
IDs. They need to know about the voter registration exercise.
And they need to be engaged. Active engagement of people is like when you invite me here to talk about these issues, you go out of your way to engage me on something that triggers useful information that I can share with you. And before I come here, you reach out and I know that, well, that I am coming here and what we are going to discuss and so on. And so by the time I arrive, it is clear in my mind what we are discussing. Why do you expect then that you will just go out there, pitch a tent, and people just stroll into your tent and say, here I am, register me? Let me tell you, in 2006, when I was executive director of the Institute for Education in Democracy, we had a serious problem of apathy, voter apathy, and young people are not registering. In fact, as you recall, in the 90s, I've been in this business of election for over 30 years now. But in the 90s, we had no young people coming out to vote because really elections, ilikuwa ni kazi ya wazee na watu wengi, kina mama. And therefore, we started thinking, how do we involve the youth in the electoral processes? And so, Kevin Obanjo, the late Kevin Obanjo of True Black Entertainment, and came to see me when I was at IED and said, I have an idea, because we had been issuing press statements on how do we get voters to be registered. So we started having this chat about how do we actually excite voters. Thankfully, I was in the US in 1992 during the Rock Your Vote campaign. You remember when Clinton was vying for the first time, he used to go with his saxophone everywhere. And then to excite African Americans and other minorities to register as voters, rock stars went out and started this campaign of Rock Your Vote campaign. So we started talking about this with Kevin. And then his friends, Ridiculous Limited, you remember them?
Yep.
KJ, Nyambane, and Tony. We got together in 2006 and decided to have something almost close to that. And that's what we started calling Vijana Tugutuke ni Time Yako campaign. And we reached out, and it was amazing because all these artists, comedians, musicians, dancers, and performers, those are the days of Kenana, Jua Kali, Nameless, all those people. They actually volunteered their services. The only thing we had to do was, I was in charge of raising funds and resources, and the rest were in charge of mobilizing. And we used to go to different parts of Kenya, camp there 3 days in advance, worked very closely with ECK and the registrar, but the ECK worked with its own counterparts in government. And what happened is that we would camp tent at Marsabit, for example, was one of the towns. We went to 14 towns in all over Kenya, to the farthest. And we pitched tent for 3 days prior to a big concert. And we had road shows in the entire town and the environs. And we had this merchandise, bandanas, whatever. And we would reach out and say, we are going to have this concert. These are the musicians. And the media was working very closely with us. And in fact, Standard Media Group had a lot of people who still work here and accompanied us in all the shows. And what they did was they sent these messages, and we would have the ECK camp there 3 days in advance. We go around getting young people to the stadium. They would register as voters, those who had ID cards.
Yeah.
And before we went there, like months in advance, we would say, you better register you better get your ID, because that's the only entry you will require to see so-and-so, Esther Wahome, to see all these people.
Yeah.
So get ready. And when people had Prezo was coming, Nameless was coming, Juakali was coming, obviously, those who had registered and had not even bothered to go and get the ID cards, they went and got. The queues were incredible.
So this is a tried and tested method, and it has worked previously. And the same body. Now it's then ECK.
6 million.
Yeah.
Yes, this process, and it was a concerted effort by ECK, by a lot of civil society organization, and by this group. At the end of the registration period, it was miraculous. Young people, over 6 million people had gotten into the...
And what period of time are we looking at here?
1 year.
Okay. So
1 year. But the preparation was actually much longer. So that's why planning is everything.
So the thing for the IEBC is that surely they must have known that there's an election coming up in 2022, right? So a year or so in advance. It's like a pregnancy. Sure, you don't just wake up and it's 9 months, right?
Baby is here.
Okay. So it could be done. So would you say...
It can be done. It has been done.
So would you say then that what we're looking at now is... maybe an attempt at a maybe lazy approach to getting this thing done? Because if we're saying not less than 4 months ago, we had one exercise which clearly flopped, and then now we are doing another exercise in the same manner in which we did the last one. There are practitioners of this same thing who had no idea that there was another exercise that's coming up on the 17th of January 2022. It's 7 months to a general election, whereby you hoped to have 6 people registered last year. 6 million people registered in October last year. It didn't happen. What are the guarantees that another 6 million, even 100,000 will register in January without doing the right work. And isn't this then a reflection of how other things are failing because of poor planning and implementation?
You said it. I will add on something else. 2 things, 2 points. The first point, there is this issue about doing the same thing
Over and over.
And expecting different results.
It should be a lesson to all of us that you really can't do the same thing using the same methods, using the same approaches, and have the same. If you don't succeed today, you rise up like a phoenix and ask yourself, what are the lessons I can learn from my failure? And how can I do this best? There are so many young people working at IEBC, in government, in all sorts of places. You seek out ideas from innovative groups, innovative people. You collaborate with others. The business of elections, the business of democracy is not the business of IEBC alone. It's all our business. We have a stake at it, all of us, not just the voters. If we don't have good elections and political stability and peace, you will not sit here with me, chatting about these things. We will be elsewhere. And therefore, it's your business.
It is, but there's something that your institute and other well-meaning groups of people have done. You played right into the hands of government institutions, and I'm going to explain what I mean. If you look at our education sector and the health sector, the majority of people who ply that particular sphere are private practitioners in this country. This government is very quick to let other people take over their role. When you came in and helped them participate in doing all this, at the back of their mind they figured reaching out to people, civil society.
Us will provide tents.
Yes.
But the other thing also, you must be willing. I tell you, as I said, I've been in this business for a long time. I remember there was a time when we couldn't have access to ECK. You couldn't dare get beyond we started, it is the late Grace Githu who started inroads and successfully managed to create entry points with the late Kivuitu. And in fact, I think it was during Kivuitu's tenure that we had access to ECK and started collaborating with. So it's not only an issue of government ceding their functions. Sometimes, when you talk about voter apathy, it is not just apathy on the voters alone. It's also apathy on the institutions that manage these processes. I say this is because you have a duty to do and you just sit back and wait. Or you make an effort. And one of the things I was telling my children the other day, we must learn not to be a complainant, because complaints will not take you anywhere. You must learn to soar like an eagle and just oversee what other people are doing and just make sure that you do your thing. And one of the things is, you cannot say, for example, that I have not been able to reach my target of registering 6 million people because of voter apathy. You have to find a reason. You have to find how you are going to address that issue. It's my business.
There is a small issue of competing interests.
That too.
Because when I look at the focus that the IEBC has, or issues emanating in and around the IEBC, it is not about voter registration. It's about ballot papers, it's about ballot boxes, it's about which mechanism, which ICT platform we are going to use this time. And all these items that I mentioned involve billions. For some reason, everything in this country is in the tens of billions of shillings. It always is.
On the government side.
Yes, very soon cows are going to cost $1 billion shillings.
But in the private sector, In the private sector, it's probably different. You know, you are right about that. When we started this morning, you told me one day at a time.
Yes.
And it is also the same thing. If you want to succeed, really, you can't do everything at the same time. You have to compartmentalize. And you have everything in its own compartment and everything with its own teams and everything with its own time frame and prioritization. So it is time now to do registration. You deal with that. And you see, and you focus, and you see who are my interlocutors, who are my targets, who are my audience. The media is the biggest supporter and the biggest the biggest driver of some of these campaigns. You engage them. I know they like to be paid for services, but there is a commercial part of it that you can use. But there is also the social media and also the other media that you can use. Surely, every media house has a corporate social responsibility aspect that you can give some airtime. I see the media houses, how do you say, airing live some of these things, and I'm thinking that is an opportunity that can be used
by others as well.
By others to ensure that you galvanize the kind of attention or the kind of engagement that you want to have.
Time for a break. With you this and every weekday morning is Eric Latif Ndu Oko CT Muga, and our guest is Ambassador Koki Muli. We are talking about the preparation for this year's general election. Voter registration exercise is about to begin. That is a mass enhanced continuous voter registration campaign that begins on Monday, the 7th of January and up to the 6th of February across the country. And then later on in the month, from the 21st of January for 15 days, various countries globally targeting Kenyans in the diaspora. Burundi, Tanzania, Rwanda, Uganda, South Africa, UK, Canada, USA, South Sudan, Germany, UAE, and Qatar. Are you aware that this is happening? Do you have your ID or passport ready to participate in this exercise, and what needs to happen? Ambassador, you have said very many times, and yes, you have been in this election space for 3 decades or more. You have engaged with various stakeholders. You have seen commissioners at the ECK come and go, and directors. You have seen IEBC commissioners and directors come and go, and you've interacted with many of them. Last year, when the president declared a vacancy in the IEBC, you're among those who applied, and you were called in for an interview, and you participated in the interview. Unfortunately for the country, you were not among those who were picked. However, my question comes into this way. As you were preparing for those interviews, you definitely must have looked through your experience and studied what are the gaps currently in IEBC. And if I become a commissioner with IEBC, these are the gaps that I need us to fix. What are those gaps, Ambassador?
First, I better declare that this is not an uncomfortable conversation for me to have, because it is not the first time that I had sought to be a commissioner at the IEBC. I did previously. And secondly, the reason why I seek to do this is because I think I have something to add. I have some value to add in the process. But then also there are many Kenyans who also have a lot to add. And therefore, when you look for a job, you don't necessarily have guarantee that you will get it, whether you are qualified or not. Whoever is looking to hire, they are looking for specific, special fits, the right fit for the position that they are looking for. Yeah. So I don't suffer from sour grapes.
They are multidimensional. We are having a conversation with a statistician. They're multidimensional in what they're looking for.
Exactly.
Okay.
So you may look for qualities. I may have a few of what they are looking for, but I may not have everything that they want.
Okay.
And therefore, I don't hold this against the government or the interview panel or whoever is in the selection. It is okay. And this, when I speak harshly or, bluntly about electoral issues, I speak them from my heart. I don't speak out of sour grapes, because if I had sour grapes, I would not come here and socialize with you. I would just sit at home and sulk and wait for the next vacancy
and ferment quietly.
You see, and
Said grapes.
and it's like the story of the carrying rotten tomatoes for weeks because you are angry, and so that's how anger and sour grapes deal with people. I love my country. I am a patriot. I always say that, and I am very happy I had an opportunity to prove that I'm a patriot for almost 7 years when I went and served my country as ambassador in foreign countries and defended our interest. This is what you see, and all my years I've worked in this area, it is really because I love Kenya, and this is where I want to spend my glorious years until the good Lord calls me across. So, when with regard to the question you ask, and in terms of the improvements, you won't believe me when I tell you that we are so much more in a better place than we were ever in terms of the IEBC, in terms of the legal framework, the institutional framework, and also the capacities and the independence that institution has got to date. It never was like that. It was terrible before. And I can tell you without any fear of contradiction that what we have right now, if we really used it well and applied well, we would really make a lot more progress. I told you previously when we had a conversation that we have come a long way, but we want to have more because we know we have potential for more. And that's why I am telling you the gaps in the IEBC. For example, we have a very comprehensive legal framework. The problem is we don't implement it. That's a big gap. The second thing is that you said about Muga, about we do things in billions. We are fixated about budget and money. We need to move beyond that and implement and utilize those resources. You work with what you have at the time you have those resources.
Can I jump in there, Ambassador? Because as some of the things that you're talking about now, in order to solve a problem, to get a solution, you must look at what is causing the problem.
Exactly.
Right? To say, okay, we have a problem here, we have a problem here. If we're going to get to a solution stage, then we need to fix this particular issue. Right? Now, you've talked about you talked about the system being fixated on money. And budgets. But is that not
little action?
Right. Is that not what the IEBC told us in October? That we would have liked to do more. But the money that we asked for in the first place, we did not get, and we're only going to be able to get to point B. So are you then saying that if you look at it holistically, that probably the issue is not money? That there could be another issue that if you took care of, you could get a little bit more. What stops us in so many instances of so many cases from making that leap? Because we've been told so many times, you have the potential, you can do so much better, but then we're not seeing that leap from having the potential to actually becoming. Why is it? Is it money? Is it lack? Or is it a compilation of all of these issues?
It's a compilation of all these issues. When you don't have sufficient funds to do what you have to do, and then you must do it anyway, you look at what you have and you prioritize on that basis. Take, for example, in your house, you have a budget for the month, and then suddenly you have an emergency. Let's say something happens and you need to resolve it. You spend a certain amount of money dealing with that emergency, so it leaves you with a certain amount that is not enough for the month. What do? Do you sit back and complain? Or do you make do with what you have?
Make do.
That's what we are talking about. So we say, okay, I must prove to you that I promise you that what you give me is not enough, but it can take me to point B. So my business now is to take all of us to point B so that then you can see I have
If you had
proved
given
my
me
point.
more, we could have gone to C.
Exactly. So if I tell you I'll take you to point B, but I take you somewhere between point A and B, and I had told you that I could take you to point B with what you have given me, what are you left thinking? Don't
Incompetence.
answer. Now the other point is, and I'm saying this out of love, out of love. What we
Love
started
and be
with.
loved.
I'm saying this out of love for my country, and because I know that if we all focused on what we are supposed to do and did our best with what we have, we will surely make the difference. We will take that leap that you are talking about, Ndu. Because we lack, I don't know, is it discipline?
Yes.
We also, in to add to your factors, all these factors you are saying, that derail us. And we also put a lot of hurdles on our way. We don't trust each other. We don't trust our systems. And therefore, we legislate for trust.
Yeah.
We spend millions of shillings trying to resolve trust issues instead of focusing on what moves Kenya forward. And so, and also people lack discipline. And as you said earlier, I don't know if it was on air or before, when you have people working in an organization, but they are kila mtu ni mjuaji na ni mkubwa.
Everyone is an expert.
You know, everybody's an expert and they are important and they are big. Therefore, you really don't have the leadership. You know, you have to have a hierarchy.
Yeah.
Strategic leadership must be up here. And then the team, you know, you have to have soldiers and the generals. You can't all be generals. Someone has to really,
Someone has to do the job.
has to do the job. And then those who are doing the job, they need to have strategic leadership and guidance so that you know this is my level. My level is on policy framework and guidance. I am going to ensure that the three of you come here every morning and you do your thing the best way without having to worry about who is making what decision. Put people on their lane, facilitate them on their lane, but they must remain on their lane and move this needle forward. That's the idea. So the issues you're asking me, it is not only wrong, it's not what is missing or the challenges that IEBC is suffering from. It's the challenges that our society is suffering from. We are always blaming someone else and complaining about what we are not able to do. We must really own our truth and start looking at our own self and how we are contributing or not contributing. Because you can't really wake up every morning and come here. Like, for example, what you are doing is very important. You are actually educating me and everyone else about this campaign, the dates, what you need to go to register as a voter, where in the diaspora this is going to happen. And your influence in social media is going to help a lot more Kenyans to come out. But then we have to find a way, everybody, all the young people, all the people who are unregistered, you can't go saying, I'm not registering because the leaders we have are not good enough. You are the reason why we have these choices we have. If you registered as a voter and came out to vote, you would actually be able to determine the kind of leader that you want. But you can't just sit home and complain.
cannot
And that's
sit
why
back.
I'm saying, really, if you are 18 and above, Go out, get an ID card, and register as a voter, and go out and vote for the person that you want to vote for to make a change, or even present yourself as a candidate. But don't complain if you get, charlatans as your leaders, because you are the reason they are there.
How do you deal with some of these competing interests? Because in as much as we hear them and they sound frivolous, to the person who is bringing them out, they have some weight. Some of the things that we've heard is, well, I'm not even going to bother with this whole process because I've seen it previously has been flawed. Things have been decided already in advance of time. These are ideas that people have that would stop them from going out and do this thing that you're talking about now. How do we deal with those attitudes? Because people will tell you, no, the decisions have already been made. So my activity in this whole process then doesn't matter.
How do you change attitude? It is by creating awareness and replacing lack of information with some information. I would say it is not to love and be loved that is everything. Love is wonderful, but it must be accompanied by faith and hope. If you have no faith and hope, you can't successfully love and be loved. And I'm talking about this because these competing issues within the IEBC, within government and outside government, are important and cannot be trivialized. The apathy among young people and other voters, it's not, by the way, only young people who are saying, listen, I go to vote every year, and what do I get? My vote doesn't count. The only way we can show people that their vote counts is continuously providing civic and voter education and to show a difference. Let me tell you, for years, Kenyans were trying to have a new constitution. For years, since independence. Since the 70s, the late 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s. It was only in 2010 that we got a new Katiba. And how did we do that? You realize that people actually woke up. Civic education made fundamental difference. The involvement, that Bomas process, really woke people up. And the CKRC going outside Kenya, outside Nairobi,
To the towns.
to the villages, and those community hearings, like the same ones that the IEBC used to do for boundary delimitation, they do make a difference. Because you reach out to people and you have a conversation in a community about why we should register as a voter. And people say, like, really? Oh, wow, okay. Well, maybe I'll give it a try. But it is important to create awareness. Sometimes it is lack of information, sufficient information. And it is also persuasion that, listen, it will actually make a difference when you go out and vote. And cast a vote. Because if you are enough and you don't want Muga to be your member of parliament, he will not be. And then you can choose Ndu to be your member of parliament to replace him. I know I'll be in trouble. But then you get the point I'm saying.
Yes.
That we need to create awareness for sure. And people need, information is power, really. And that's what we need to get out to people. And we also need to persuade people. Because if I want you to see my point, I'm not going to sit here and sulk. I have to persuade you.
But there's a competing interest with what you say. It is true what you say, and it is spot on. The competing interest is called lived experience. Because you will talk to young people, and yet what you're saying they may understand it at an academic level, but they look at their lived experience and they find congruence. So what you then have is an entire generation of people
that are lost.
Yes, and they actually don't give a damn. And the reason is everything you're telling them to give a damn about, they look at and they look at their lives, and this benefit you're speaking of, again, is an academic subject.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.